All right. You guys had a project to work on for me at first. The business card. We saw that one. Right? You guys had another project to work on for me. Did I give you the greeting card?
You what?
Not yet.
So
We
the
didn't hear
what?
us anymore.
Did I give you guys another project to work on for me?
No,
No.
so you didn't.
No. But did I tell you about it at all? No.
No.
About the
Brochure.
flyer.
I remember something about a brochure, I believe, right?
A brochure. Was it a
Yeah.
greeting card or a brochure? Yeah. I said the next project you'll have to work on for me was the brochure, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll get to that. Sorry. I lost my page with my notes. All right, there we go. Okay, so yeah, the next thing was the properties of the smart objects. Just get my two files on again, paste the embedded one on top. Actually, let me edit that file first. In the meantime, while I'm doing that, I suppose I can talk to you about the next project. Speaking greeting card, but it should actually be a brochure. Yeah. See, I think you guys are ready for it, but let me give you a similar one first. It's a flyer. So, simple one is a flyer. I want you to design a flyer for me, right? And it should be a flyer advertising this course, the course that you're doing now, the ACA and Adobe Photoshop from BTC. Yeah. I'm sure you've seen an existing flyer already for this course. I'm sure there's a flyer that you see to sign up, right? Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I want you to create a variant of that flyer, your own design, your own concept. Use the same information that's on the original flyer. All right. Use your creativity and let me see what you can come up with. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay. So the next thing we're gonna look at is embedding a linked object, linking an embedded object, smart object. This. All right. Looking on the layers palette. Here. Can you guys tell which is linked, which is embedded? I just mentioned it a little while ago.
The top one
The
link
top one is linked, all right.
and the one below it.
The bottom one is embedded. Great. Here's another way that you can actually tell. All right. One of the panels that we haven't really gone through much is the properties panel. And what that is, it actually shows you the properties of whatever object you have selected. Okay. So in this case, we have, and let me put them in the same order there in the layers panel, just so it doesn't confuse us. So the one at the top is the linked object and the one at the bottom is embedded. So if we go to the properties panel for the linked object, notice it says linked smart object. So it tells us what type of object it is. And it also gives us the location for the object. Let's open it wider. You can see it. So currently that object is saved in C users, Leonard Green documents, mommy, one clock, one level, right? So if we were to edit that file, that PSD file right there, we know that it will result in a change happening on our file, on our linked file on that document, right? If we were to look at the embedded one, notice what we see is embedded smart object. We see the size and the name of the object that was embedded, which is the original PSD. All right. Now, You can edit the contents right from the properties panel, meaning the same thing you would do by right-clicking on the layer there and clicking edit contents, which will allow you to edit the smart object or the individual layers in the smart object, right? And you can also convert it from a linked to an embedded and vice versa. So from a link to an embedded and from an embedded to a linked object right from your properties panel right there. All right. Now, because we're more likely to do it one way and not the other, I'm just going to show you one way before we move on. All right. Now,
Okay.
if you have a linked object, right? Can you give me a reason why you might want to embed it?
If you have to make changes and you don't want it to change in that file.
Not necessarily. You could on the original file. Yes, okay, yes, you're right. That is one reason. You're correct. You're absolutely correct. Any others? I was thinking of something in particular. That's why it took me a second to realize I'm correct here. So, what is the main reason you might want to embed an object into a document? All right. So let's say I ask you to send me that document that you're working on. All right. If you send me the document with a linked smart object, I'm not going to have the smart object, so I'm not going to edit the smart object. I'm not going to be able to edit the smart object. You will actually have to send me both the file and any linked smart object as well. You understand? But let's say you have your linked smart objects and you're going to send it to an outside party. You're going to send it for me, for instance, right? You could embed it. That way, when you send that single file, all of the necessary content that I need is in that file. So the smart object will then be embedded. So I have it when I have the original. Okay, so we will just click embed from the properties, right? And that would change your linked smart object to an embedded smart object. Everybody get that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. What are some of the other benefits of smart objects? Can anybody remember?
Non-destructive edits.
We have non-destructive filters, right? Non-destructive transforms. You guys know what a transform is? So let me demonstrate. So one of the more common transformations that you might use as a graphic designer is flip horizontal, right? So all of your transformation options are found under the edit menu. So transform, flip horizontal. Can somebody tell me what flip horizontal will do?
Make it go upside down.
No, in Photoshop, it will basically give you the equivalent of a mirror image.
Oh, okay.
You see that?
Yeah.
So I just mirrored that smart object, right? So it's been flipped. However, if I right click here and I go to edit contents, notice it gives it to me in the correct orientation. In the original, not the correct, sorry, but the original orientation, meaning the original way the smart object was saved and not the edit that happened to the smart object. Right? So that is what they mean by non-destructive transforms. Here's another example of a non-destructive transform. If you were working with, and let me close that. Step back. All right. So if you're working with an image, for instance, let's say a picture of yourself, you can imagine how destructive it would be to do something like this, to squeeze and stretch your image to that. Can you imagine what it would look like if you were dealing with somebody's face? Right? It would be all skewed, right?
Yeah.
But with the smart object, if I go to edit contents, notice my dimensions, my proportions are just the same. All right? So it allows me to perform non-destructive transforms. All right. Now, The next thing I'm going to show you is, well, let's have it for another class. It would involve moving a vector object from Illustrator. And that is actually one of the advantages, right? It will allow you to work with vector artwork from application like Illustrator and keep all of the vector information intact without rasterizing. All right. And when I have something set up, I'm prepared for Illustrator in another class. I will show you an example of that. But for now, I think you guys have a pretty good understanding. All right.
Yes.
Here's another area where you might want to use a smart object in templating. Any of you guys have any idea what is a mockup?
No. Nothing.
So what?
A mockup. No mockup? Okay. All right, let me show you an example of a mockup. So a mockup is sort of like a digital preview of a physical object. All right. So let's suppose I were doing a design for a t-shirt. All right. Okay, let's suppose I was doing a design for a t-shirt and I wanted to see what the finished product would look like, right? I would be able to create a mock-up, or I would create a mock-up that would demonstrate what the final product would look like. So give me a minute updating that design. Yeah. So this t-shirt, for example, is just a mock-up of what it would look like with that straight out of quarantine design printed on it.
Review.
Yeah. Does the mock-up make sense to everybody now? Let me see if I can find another example of a mock-up.
So a question.
Go ahead.
Excuse me. Is there no other name for the mockup?
Any other name for the mock-up? No, I think that's pretty much what we call it in the design industry. If you come up with something else, let me know. But that is pretty much what we call it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so let me give you. All right, so using a jobs that we've done previously. This is another example of a mock-up. So just to demonstrate, we have a picture of a building, all right? And we want to demonstrate what it would look like if we were to put graphics on those windows, right? We would essentially prepare a mock-up for the client so they could get an idea.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Here's another example right there. So we have a picture of the area and we want to demonstrate what the final version will look like, create a mock-up. So you could do that for t-shirts, billboards, you could create mock-ups for business cards, you could create mock-ups for actually any product that you're going to produce. A mock-up is basically taking the virtual version of it and applying it onto a picture of the actual product to sort of get an idea of what the final version would look like. Yes?
Yes.
So smart objects come in handy for mocking up because it actually will allow us to do things like change the design, change the mockup, and change the original design and have the mockup updated in real time. Or we could use one mockup and compare multiple designs with it. So in that example, we're looking at a t-shirt here, and I have my smart object layer, right? I go to edit contents, for example. Edit contents. All right. Notice I have a number of different designs here for the most part. All right. And I can apply them onto the t-shirt to see what it will look like. All right.
Okay.
You
Okay.
got it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, sir.
I can also switch out one smart object for another. So again, let's go back to my original document. All right. Notice I have this smart object layer here. I can actually change it. So I'm going to replace contents, right, with the contents of another smart object. So I'm going to take, and we should probably never do that. But I'm going to take a completely different smart object, which is the same wine label that we were working with before, and place it in place of this current smart object. Yeah. So we can actually switch out one smart object for another. Let me do the same thing again. We're going to replace it with a different smart object or different object, right? This time let's use the card. Right. So that's actually a greeting card. That's a different smart object. But you get the idea. Smart objects allow us to make changes to our design that would be more difficult if we were just using regular objects. It also allows us to keep data in our design that would be useful if we want to come back and reuse elements of our design, right? Or go back to a previous point in editing. Okay?
Okay.
All right, everybody good with smart objects?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I did send you a link to that Adobe page where they have a bit more information. Everybody has the link? As a matter of fact, I'm going to copy it right now and send it in the WhatsApp group. So I want you guys to just review that on your own. All right, when you get a chance.
Okay.
Everybody good?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Also, before we close up, I have a few questions about the exam. Right? A number of you guys have been asking about the exam.